Hi, everyone. This is Jason Barrack of Wall Street from Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street from Main Street podcast interview. Today's special guest is a first-time guest. She runs the website Brave the World, and she's an anti-state propagandist. Julia Tourianski, thank you for joining me.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I want to ask you questions about your background for our listeners who are not familiar with you. How did you wake up to what governments were doing and become a libertarian?
I kind of identify more with, if you're going to label me, as an individualist anarchist. And the way I got there was basically through the process of elimination. Nothing else works, and if you think it does, then I don't know what world you're living in, to be honest.
Well, there's so many people, I guess, conditioned to believe in government, and I guess they have, this unicorn, Mickey Mouse, Disneyland view of governments, I guess, that they were taught in either schools. You have a very interesting background. You were born in Russia, you live in Canada now, I guess, and you have traveled to different cities in the U.S. Why do you think the U.S. and many developed world countries use so much central planning when many former Soviet countries have abandoned it?
Well, the irony here is all of these democratic progressive liberals who mostly live in California these days and New York, and they love to throw these terms around, like I get called this all the time, like white privilege. They are the most, by definition, white privileged people in the whole entire existence of the world in history. They've never had to deal with anything serious in their lives. They've been silver spoon fed their entire lives. Most socialists come from upper middle incomes. If they ever experience the hardship of trying to make money or start a business or provide for your family or live in a free society, which they haven't experienced because they've lived in a bubble of self-assured security, nice networking opportunities, and their nice little neighborhoods with their pools, then they wouldn't be socialist, Democrats, liberal, progressives, whatever you want to label them. They would be realists, and that includes the understanding that governments are not there to serve you. I probably have the privilege of understanding that firsthand because I come from a country where we've been oppressed in the past several generations. We've been completely oppressed. We haven't been able to live freely, and we have a healthy disdain for governments and for power hierarchies and structures because people in Eastern Europe know what it's like to have a dictator throw your relatives in jail for disagreeing with the status quo.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, most of the hardcore progressive people I talk to, they hate capitalism, but yet, they have an iPhone, they want to drive a Tesla or brand new BMW.
They're the most artificial, superficial, materialistic people I've ever met. Ranting on about helping people overseas while they sit around on the tech that's made by workers overseas, which they don't support. It's such irony. It's these people, they're so placid and content and happy because they literally have nothing bad in their lives ever, that they need to make up the problems of capitalism in their mind and go to the other extreme, which is much worse.
Yeah, they're total hypocrites. I mean, like they do what they say. They want people to do what they say and not what they do. I mean, look at these politicians like who are talking about gun control and things like that. And in the United States, a lot of these guys own guns or they have like
an army of security guards with guns.
Exactly. They think they're above the rules. So they're their lawyer background or they can hire the best lawyers and then here they go. And, they think the laws don't apply to them. I guess that happened a lot in the Soviet Union, too, where there was just so much corruption.
I've spoken to a man from England who's had a pretty easy life. I don't subscribe to this whole white privilege thing. It's all relative. You live in a situation that you were gifted or you were born into. It's nobody's fault. But then don't act superior to other people. And this dude, he grew up his whole life in England, was a prof. And he thinks anybody who is pro-gun or owns a gun is paranoid. And I very simply posed him the question. My father, in just post-Soviet Union collapse, had 3 guns in the house, 2 guard dogs, and a fence. Because in Russia, you can't call the cops, and there's a lot of crime. So he had guns to protect his family and his 2 little kids and his wife and his property. Is he paranoid? Yes, he's paranoid, and he's ridiculous. Excuse me? Have you ever been to Russia? That is getting to a point of either retardation or willful insanity. And this is a smart guy overall, but with these weird progressive ideals, they just can't be shaken, because if they admit wrong on such an obvious objective truth, then their whole world collapses.
Well, they also want to give the government more power, right? So if the state controls all the guns, then the people are docile little sheeple and they can't do anything to fight the state then. So I think if you go back through history and you look at all the different governments that have, collected guns and weapons, and, before guns, it was other weapons that the governments used to collect from the citizens to make sure they couldn't fight. I mean, even the Romans were collecting swords and things like that and weapons from the people that they conquered. So, I mean, this is a normal thing throughout history. And look what happened in England when they collected the guns, right? The knife crime went up. I think there's 100,000 stabbings a year.
Yeah,
There's some enormous...
England has the highest violent crime rate in the entirety of the first world countries. So who cares if they're not shooting each other? What's the difference if they're still killing each other somehow?
Exactly. The criminals will find a loophole in the law, and the people who want to change the laws, these progressives, they're hypocrites, and they think that, if we only change the laws, that we can fix things and all this, but it's just going to create unintended consequences.
Yeah, and the difference between them and us is I don't like them, I disagree with them, I don't want anything to do with them, but I still would like them to have their freedom. The difference is they don't want me to have my freedom. They want to control me.
Yeah, and I think that's, are the U.S. and other developed countries now headed down a similar path to the Soviet Union then, in your opinion?
It's a much more efficient path because it's masked as something beneficial, and it's not labeled as socialism, it's just labeled as fairness and equality. At least during the Soviet Union, it was a new dogma. It was like something to try out. Like, we're going to overthrow everything. It's going to be for the proletariat. And you can't throw everything Marx says away. Marx has a lot of very valid criticism of capitalism during his time, like the industrial age. But people like Bookchin, who's also more of a communal socialist, like he's much more progressive in that kind of thought. He disagrees with Marx on most things. He says Marx is completely irrelevant now, but he acknowledges his importance in his time. And now it's irrelevant because of the way the history has progressed and the way that society and power is structured today. So Marx isn't relevant anymore. But if it wasn't for Marx, we wouldn't have Mises. We wouldn't have Rothbard. These are all reactions to Marx. You can throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to appreciate the things Marx did criticize, and then also be able to objectively detach the result of his philosophy that was very perverted, and his philosophy which sounds very lovely in theory, like a lot of philosophies, but can never be applied, especially to this day and age.
Yeah, and a lot of the Marxist ideology, it's been changed into derivatives, and it's been put into the mainstream media. It's been put in university professors' minds and college textbooks, and so many other areas of pop culture that prophets are evil and exploiters and things like that. And it's just really frustrating. There's not more entrepreneurship in the United States and Canada.
Yeah, try to go to the bank, go to the government, try to get a loan to start a small business. My parents' small business was just fined $500 because we didn't indicate some small thing about alcohol on our alcohol menu. And that law or regulation isn't even indicated in their FAT regulation book about liquor licensing. It's just alluded to within the framework of the other laws. And I called them and I said, point me to where it says that we need to do this. And it says it's just alluded to by the context of everything else. And we actually had the guy that comes around and checks that we're all up to
the inspector.
Yeah, the inspector, Jesus. So he came around, he's like, everything's great. And then 3 years later they come around, they say, oh, you missed this part, we're gonna fine you now because you haven't done it for 3 years. Well, where the hell were you 3 years ago when we asked you for up to code? It's all about making money. Nobody actually cares about anyone's well-being.
Yeah, I completely agree. And a lot of these government bureaucrats, they have quotas, and the policemen now in the United States, they've turned into basically IRS tax agents now. They don't go stop violent crimes as much as they should. A lot of the times they're hiding behind the bushes for speeding tickets so they can issue, a whole bunch of dozen $200 speeding tickets a day so they can make a whole bunch of money for the government.
I just wonder, what these guys, you go to a cocktail party or something, someone asks what you do you admit to them, oh, I'm a traffic cop? Well, where does the conversation go after? I would just laugh and be like, wow, buddy, you're the most hated person.
So some of them, Julia, in Philadelphia, they have unions, and some of these traffic cops are meter maids. They make like over $80,000 a year with better benefits. So the government employees actually make more money than the average private sector employee in the United States now in a lot of major cities.
I know the BART operators in San Francisco who like literally press a button to make the train stop and go forward make 120 grand a year from tax money. And then I have friends working in startup Bitcoin companies that are actually changing the framework of the world that get paid the same as a fucking guy who presses a button on the subway, which is usually late anyways.
Exactly. Well, welcome to dystopia where, you know, a lot of government employees make more money than private sector employees, and yet private sector employees have to create the wealth, right? That government,
and then
government
they get
can't
taxed
create.
like crazy.
It's a really negative feedback loop right now. I traveled to Toronto last year and was treated to a Canadian version of TSA at the airport. Is Canada just copying the U.S., or is big government, a police state, and central planning a blind ideology many people in governments believe in?
Canada is America's hat. That's as plainly as I can put it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot of similarities that are going on up there in Toronto.
Yeah, and you know, like when you like greet your superior, you like tip your hat, like you take your hat off and bow. That's Canada to America.
That's probably why Canada sold most of its gold a while ago too.
Oh, we're so screwed. We only have reserves in American dollars. Like we're so screwed if the dollar collapses. So dumb.
Yeah, and you guys, a lot of your economy, at least a while ago, was based on commodity prices, and the commodity prices haven't been doing so well.
I heard that we like sold our fresh water to China too. I don't know if that's true, but that would be really dumb too.
You would know more about that than me. I know the Chinese are going to Toronto and Vancouver and buying up real estate like crazy from all the money they printed, their politicians and corrupt government bureaucrats and stuff like that, and other crony capitalists there took the money and.
At least, if they're doing that, we should be taking their gold for it, but I guess we're probably taking American for it, which is so dumb.
Well, in your opinion, if you were a benevolent dictator, what should people and governments be doing to have a better economy and better society then?
I've thought about this before quite a bit. Leave people alone, take away income tax, take away income tax. You could gradually reduce all this stuff, but I just feel like a nice quick wake-up call and collapse would create the clean slate. I mean, it will be really terrible for a while, but then it'll get a lot better. The problem is these government workers will just riot and go crazy and, make everyone else's life miserable. So probably something more gradual would be a lot better short term. But it'll take longer. So, I mean, it depends. Like, if you got your bunker and you want your chaos, like, and you have your guns and you have your frozen food and your dry foods, yeah, let's do it. Let's collapse the government. But most people don't have that. And, like, there's a lot of good people who don't have that and who don't have the resources to prepare that way. And it's a difficult question, man. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, taxation is theft. I think most people, the progressives, the socialists, they don't understand this. Either they don't understand it or they refuse to acknowledge it. They have their ideology and they're sticking to their guns here. I think Ron Paul said that, we should just pay 10%. Everyone should just pay 10% in taxes so the government leaves us the fuck alone.
Yeah. I wish these statists would just try to start a small business and see all the hoops you have to jump through. Just try it. And then you'll realize how oppressed you really are, that you need permission. You need to ask for permission to make money for your own country and economy. Are you serious? I mean, I don't want to be incremental about things and lenient, but I would probably not be doing much of this if, we had a small percent flat tax and small businesses were encouraged and government workers were paid appropriately, not ridiculous. That would be okay. That would be not terrible, and we wouldn't have too much to complain about. There wouldn't be money to fund the wars, etc. But that's not what it is. It's always a perpetual increase of control, always. And it's going to end. And it's not even a conspiracy theory. If the power structure is so augmented, if it's basically world dominance right now via America, and it has been for years, it's going to collapse. That's the natural progression of things. Like any biological matter, it dies. It grows to some extent, and then it dies. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and the money system is a perpetual. It's a fiat currency created as debt, loaned into existence as debt. Now, you're a big proponent of Bitcoin. How did you find out about Bitcoin, and what do you like about it?
I saw it on the Silk Road, I didn't really get it when I saw it. I just thought it was a way to circumvent using dollars. It is, but I mean, that's all I thought of it. Then I got involved with Mises Canada, and the economics were explained to me, not directly, but because I started getting into Austrian economics and Bitcoin, it fits the model, you know. Then I met some radicals and I just got it. I had this moment where I just understood that this isn't just about the economics and this isn't just about an alternate currency. Like, this is a whole philosophy. And yeah, that's that.
It's a beautiful piece of technology. I mean, I've read a bunch of Bitcoin books and interviewed other Bitcoin experts for our channel. The blockchain is an amazing piece of innovation there, meant to limit the supply so governments can't, at least right now, they can't, overwhelm it and create massive amounts of new currency units and things like that on the blockchain.
Yeah, I'm flying to Montreal tonight to go to the Scaling Bitcoin conference. It's more of a workshop. So that'll be interesting. I'm glad that Mike Hearn and Gavin Andresen are being totally pushed out and disrespected, and their voices are more irrelevant every day, which is a great win for us. And by us, I mean the people who actually care about the ethos of Bitcoin. We're not just focused on one aspect of it, and I think Hearn is a government operative. I think he's just a shill, and I think he was placed there from the beginning to just disrupt, and he failed, and I'm very happy.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I think Edward Snowden revealed that in his document leaks that the government hires paid trolls to comment on, mainstream articles on investing and finance that, the economy is going to be fine and things like that. My next question for you is also about Bitcoin. Many of the opponents of Bitcoin in the mainstream media like to talk about the Silk Road and the conviction of Ross Ulbricht. What do you think they're not seeing about Bitcoin?
So is the question, what does the general public think of Bitcoin?
The question then is that, a lot of people just talk about, it's used by criminals and things like that. But what are they not seeing about it that, when you look beyond the fact that, it was used by Silk Road, but there's so many other people using it? Why are people not seeing that there's so many other uses for Bitcoin besides just Silk Road and stuff like that? And why does the mainstream media keep, talking about, it's used by drug dealers and counterfeiters and stuff like that?
People are just used to their own existence, right? Like, if you're a victim of abuse your entire life, your defense mechanism will be a reaction to internalize it and make it okay in your own mind and like it even. It's a superficial liking, obviously, but that's the defense mechanism of rape victims and molestation victims and abuse victims. Anything alien to that is destroying that self-defense mechanism. Unless you can get over that hump, you won't get better. The analogy works for everything. If you don't understand that cash is used by criminals, then that's just you living in a small little bubble, because saying that, Bitcoin is a criminal currency while paying for your coffee in $1 that probably some girl snorted coke from last weekend. You're literally living in a small world of delusion.
Well, hardworking people, too, also use cash. I mean, we're headed towards the cashless society. I think that's what the central planners, the powers that be want. They want to be able to track every people's transaction.
But I'm very positive about that, because they tried this out in England. They've been doing experimental runs of a cashless society in small towns in England, and people are not happy about it. They had a whole town converted to credit and debit only, and people were not ready for it. They don't want that. People like using cash. And once they're confronted with it, most people evade tax. Most good, hardworking people who are pro-government still evade taxes. If you have a cash business, or if you earn money under the table, like you're like a roofer or something, you're not gonna declare that. Nobody declares that. There's go to any Chinatown and look at all those little businesses. How do you think they stay afloat? They don't pay taxes. It's all cash. You go there, you can't pay with a credit card. It's all cash. But you think they're paying taxes? You think they're declaring that? No. Everyone's a criminal. People need to admit that everyone's a criminal. It's not a bad thing. You're a criminal. Great. Congratulations.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. Yeah, a lot of Democrats, they'll say they want higher taxes to fund these charities and this and that stuff.
Other people's taxes, not their taxes.
Exactly. They'll be the ones looking for the loopholes. One of my friends told me the story of this rich hedge fund manager that bought a house in Puerto Rico. And, he was doing that to reduce his tax bill. And this Democratic senator was on, all the TV shows in the United States blasting this rich billionaire hedge fund manager, right, for moving to Puerto Rico. And he was like on every show for like a couple days. And supposedly the next day, off the record, he calls up this hedge fund manager and says, I'm sorry for blasting you on TV. I had to do that to get my vote so I can stay in office and make all this money. But how do I move to Puerto Rico and move my assets and houses down there so I don't pay taxes?
Wow.
The hypocrisy of the stuff that goes on in the United States, I'm sure it's similar up there in Canada too.
People want to keep their money. Why is that a bad thing? Like, you earned it.
Exactly. That's common sense. But I mean, I guess like the progressives and the government people in power, I guess like a lot of it's bred out. For your opinion of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, what's your opinion of the future of it? Do you think a lot of people are going to start using it? Do you think it's finally going to go mainstream in the near future then?
I think it'll take a while. I personally don't care about the mainstream. It'll bring the price up, which is nice, but it'll take a little while for the regular person to really get it. Like, and some people don't have use for Bitcoin. Like, the normal middle wage person, like, doesn't really have much use for it. So to jump on this, like, utopian bandwagon that everyone's going to be using Bitcoin soon is, like, kind of silly to me. The main thing for me is for us to be allowed to continue developing the tech unobstructed by law, and that's looking iffy. But at the same time, I don't really care if they make it illegal in certain states because it'll just move somewhere else. I'm not too worried about it. I don't really care about mainstream adoption at this point. Like, it'll happen eventually when people feel like they need it. I think there is going to be another economic downturn soon, which will help people care more about diversifying their portfolio. I just don't worry about it. It's not a big concern for me.
What worries me about it is that Wall Street is starting to invest a lot of money into it, and they're bringing in a lot of their guys. And normally when Wall Street puts a lot of money into a market or something like that, they're looking for ways to cheat and manipulate and make money off of it. So, hopefully they don't figure out some type of loophole where they can, overload the blockchain or something like that and either break it or cheat and create excess coins, because they figured out ways to do that with stocks and other currencies and precious metals, futures contracts, so they can create all these paper, gold, and silver.
Right, well, this is where Bitcoin's different because it's a transparent public ledger. It's an algorithm. You're not going to be able to implement anything that's a cheat unless you're a developer and they put it through. I mean, this is the beauty of it, right? It's not, in theory, it's not perfect. It's not, in theory, it's an objective truth. It's math. You can't alter math. Like with the dollar, you can do whatever you want. It's not math. It's some paper money that's not tied to anything anymore. This is a technology. This is just like there's certain things at this point you can't do with Bitcoin. Of course, a bear whale could, empty out his reserve and, bring the price up or bring it down, and that can happen. But that's like natural manipulation. That's nothing shadowy because we see it. When someone throws a bunch of Bitcoin into the market, we see it. We see the address. We see what's happening. It's not from some shadowy agency that we have no control of.
Yeah, so it's just normal market behavior. If some guy decides that he wants to sell a certain amount of his Bitcoin, let's say Satoshi gets doxxed or he finally comes out who he really is and he decides he wants to sell a certain amount of his Bitcoin.
Sure.
So
who cares? Let him do it. It's his Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. So in a free society, in a free market, he should be able to sell it if he wants.
Markets aren't perfect. Markets go up and down. Like, markets are chaos. By controlling markets, that's where we create long-term worse-off conditions for everybody. If you let markets go up and down and have their, crashes, and it's fine. Well, this goes back to, it's 9/11 today. This goes back to the control of events. It's the government is obsessed with preventing events from occurring. They love the non-occurrence of events. They don't want anything to happen. They want the end of history. They want to be in full control of everything. Well, this is where Bitcoin's pretty cool because the public ledger, the blockchain, is a unalterable documentation of history, whether financial, whether written, whether images. And that's the beauty of it because it brings the control to something objective, something that we can't change on a whim. That's the real main beauty of that technology, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how things unfold. We have, not besides just Wall Street, there's a lot of corporations. I think they put over $300 million worth of investment into many different blockchain companies and technologies and things like that. So I'm excited to see what other industries it disrupts in the future. My next questions are about, the personal liberty and the libertarian movement. Why don't you think there's more female libertarians?
I think women, there's a combination of upbringing and society. There's a combination of natural attributes that have been developed through evolution that help with our survival. I think women care more about what others think of them. I think women are more sensitive to other people, to other people's reactions. I think that stems from our nurturing instincts because we carry children in us for 9 months and then we have to raise them. I think there's a whole breeding strategy that is complete opposite with men and women. Women find power and stability and strength and peer acceptance attractive from a male. For a male to find a woman attractive, they can sum it up in one glance, depending on whether they look healthy and young and reproductive. What happens is women are bred based on fertility and men are bred based on intelligence and success. They also have other factors like men are more prone to risk behavior, and that's biological. You can see that from very, very, very young children. All of that combines to a mindset that is more favorable to be not in the mainstream for males. Females tend to be very concerned about being accepted into their social structure. And perhaps that's a result of when we lived in more tribal societies and we really had to, go along to get along with the rest of our kin while we're at home and raising our children communally. But the men are fine to be competitive and go out and hunt and all this and that. That's simplifying things. I've read a lot about all of these differences. I can go into it, but that's a whole entire different show. But the point is, it's not a sexist thing. It's not because men don't accept us. I'm not going to dismiss women being disenfranchised by some of the sexism that does exist in a subtle manner, because I've experienced it in myself. But it's not the kind of sexism that actually has the ability to prevent women from entering male-dominated areas like libertarianism or Bitcoin or Austrian economics, because it's very easy in America to disenfranchise men from their predetermined opinions of females by acting a certain way and by doing and accomplishing certain things. For example, I'll go to a conference and I'll look like a little Barbie doll, and a guy will come up to me and be like, "Oh, are you working here? Like, are you like a Bitcoin babe kind of thing?" And then I'm like, "No, actually, I did this, and that, and I'm here with this, blah, 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 blah." And I like give them a very legitimate portfolio of my presence. And they're like, "Oh, cool." And, if they were sexist, they would be like, they would laugh at me or something. I don't know what the sexist reaction is because I've never gotten it. What happens is actually they're like, "Oh, wow. Cool," and they comprehend that women like that exist and that it's cool. And most guys, I can't read minds, but most guys from my experience are 100% excited and willing to have more females in the space because we offer a different perspective and a different energy. And even guys get tired of the cockfest.
Yeah, I live right outside of Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of hardcore progressive, hardcore socialist democratic women who live around here who have, multiple college degrees, more than me. I have 2 degrees. They have, masters, PhDs, things like that. But what I've noticed is that they tend to believe in the system. So they think, if they get a ticket, if a policeman pulls them over, they think that they can just flirt their way out of it or something like that. So they tend to believe in the system more, that, they've adapted and that they can wiggle around and beat the rules within the existing system. And, they don't understand that taxation is theft and things like that. So they say, "Oh, no one should have a gun." And then they say, everyone should pay taxes because then we could help the poor with their charities and things like that, not realizing that, they're drastically hurting the economy with wealth redistribution, and they're not teaching the poor that they need to go out and learn useful skills to be a productive member of society. So they don't understand these things because I guess, they're used to being able to have more success in the system. Whereas, if a man is pulled over by a policeman, he's worried that, the cop may pull him out of the car or something like that. That almost never happens to a woman in the United States.
I've seen lots of videos of women of all ages being aggressed upon by police officers. I think it happens a lot. I think the society has been structured in a woman's favor in terms of getting the family out from under her and giving the family to the state and making the men irrelevant to women. I think that's one thing that I will stand by. I don't think women benefit from government that much more than men. I think, in fact, maybe in a less obvious way, women were completely destroyed by the social acceptance of today's norms for women. And you can see that with the current dating culture, the way people are having or not having families, not having children, not raising their own kids, giving them to schools. I think it's been detrimental to women. Women don't have a real role in the household anymore because we give it up to the public school system. Men don't have a real role in the household because they're not allowed, because, a woman can just get money from the state. The man can just go and be deadbeat dad and, pay a child support once in a while. That's not being a man. So all of our roles have been totally decimated by the system. And I wouldn't go as far as to say it's worse for men or women.
Oh, so, well, it sounds like then the women have been brainwashed into believing then that the government is helping them out and things like that, but it's really doing the opposite. It's like the old saying then that where the government breaks your leg and hands you a crutch and then says, look, I gave you a crutch.
Yeah, exactly. But look at the men that support the government. I don't think there's more women who support the government than men. I think there's more men in these fringe movements that are outspoken, but overall, statistically, that doesn't balance it out.
That makes a lot of sense. Is the world headed to a very dystopian future with larger and more powerful governments having control of everything or nearly everything in our lives?
Yeah, maybe for a short while, but it's not sustainable. It'll collapse. I don't think we have the chance to get too much worse before everything crumbles. The problem is what's going to be replacing it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a fight over people's minds. You were on Alex Jones recently. He calls it an information war. So I think
Definitely.
that's exactly what it is. So you have, the more government, more power, we need to hand over our freedoms, we need to hand over our liberties, we need to give government more taxes so they can do more. There's the people on one side with that, and then there's the people like you and me on the other side saying, you know what, we need more independent thinking, we need people to get more money back in their pockets, we need less taxes, and we need the small businessmen and the entrepreneurs to rebuild the economy.
A lot of it is pure social pressure. I can't tell you how many, just from my personal experience, and I don't think it's unique. I've always been arguing and disagreeing with my friends since high school about all of these things. And the guys will engage in conversation with me and talk deep into the night, and it's all good. The next day, there's no grudges. The girls, they either disassociate from the conversation very early on and move on to something more positive and lighthearted, or they get quite emotional. They end up agreeing to disagree. And then the next day, they'll text me or call me and be like, hey, I hope we're okay. I hope I didn't say anything to offend you. It's just the difference of how their mind works. Women are more concerned about other people. Women have more empathy. We're programmed to have more empathy. Our brain is structured to have more empathy. You can see this in very young children, the way that you frame arguments with them. Like if a little boy does something wrong and you say, how do you think that made Johnny feel when you did that? They won't understand. They won't be able to connect that way. The way you talk to a little boy about it is, how would you react if Johnny did that to you? That has been proven to actually make a change in behavior in little boys. With little girls, you can say, Stacy, how do you think Molly felt when you did that? And Stacy has the ability for empathy at such a young age versus a little boy. When we're little, our focus for feelings is down below in our brains, in our dinosaur brain. And then it moves up the cortex in female teenagers to the front where our speech and communication skills lie. So for women after puberty, our emotions and the ability to verbalize merge into the same area of the brain. Male brains actually stay the same. Male ability for verbalization of emotions stays the same as it was from childhood. It doesn't shift into one area. That's why men have more of a difficult time verbalizing how they feel. It's literally a physical byproduct of biology. Women are objectively more empathetic. Therefore, we don't like to hurt other people's feelings. We don't like to upset people. And having a strong opinion and verbalizing it, whether someone likes it or not, will always impose feelings on other people that you may not want to. So women have a harder time getting over that.
Okay, so they have their biological, their nature programming then to overcome them if they want to be more independent thinking and things like that. It makes a lot of sense.
We can be independent thinking, but acting on that independent thinking is more difficult for women because we really don't like making other people feel in a bad way. It's uncomfortable for us because we can feel it better. We can interpret people's emotions better. Baby girls would rather look at a face, and baby boys would rather look at moving objects. This has been studied from day one of birth. This is wired into us as biological animals.
Well, you've definitely given our listeners a lot of interesting things to think about. I've enjoyed our discussion today. I'd definitely like to have you back on in the future. Please tell our listeners where they can find your work.
Sure, bravetheworld.com. I'm also great on Twitter @bravetheworld, and then I have a Facebook page and all that good stuff. You can find everything I mentioned from bravetheworld.com.
Okay, Great. Well, thanks again for your time, Julie. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.